We continue now at the top of Daf 20b Meseches Menachos. This is Menachos Daf 20b. On the previous summit, the Gemara said that which is similar to carbon mincha, it requires salting. If it's not similar to carbon mincha, then it does not require salting. And the Gemara in the previous summit said that avarim, the limbs that are burned on the mizbeach, they're similar to the carbon mincha in a number of respects, and therefore salt is required. And the Gemara now continues and asks, Adrab, on the contrary, dam havalei l'ribuye, the blood should be included. One should have to salt the blood. Shekain matir kamosa, because that also has similarities to the carbon mincha. It is a matir, it is a permitter, just like the carbon mincha, just like the komets of the carbon mincha. And nifsal b'shkias hachama kamosa, it also is disqualified at sunset, just like the carbon mincha, and so there are similarities there, and so the Gemara answers, Hanoch nefishon, the similarities by avarim are more, and so therefore since there are more similarities, that is included, and not dam. And Rashi explains, Dam nifsal b'shkias hachama, dam is disqualified at sunset, de'eno roy lizrok balayla, one cannot throw the blood at night, d'chsib b'yom tzavoso es b'nei Yisrael lahakriv, it says b'yom. V'dam l'machar nifsal belina, and then the next day it's disqualified because it was left overnight. Kedamrinim b'Meseches zvachim b'perak ezel mekoman, like we say in perak ezel mekoman, minayin l'dam shenifsal b'shkias hachama, from where do we know that blood is disqualified at sunset? Talmud Lomar, the pasuk says, "Biyom hakrivo es zivcho v'hasam yalef lashaper." Over there, it's learned out properly. V'chein kometz deleel mi biyom tzavoso kasav zos haTorah la'ola v'lamincha v'gomer. And the same is true by the komets. Aval evare ola. When it comes to the limbs of ola, however, hutru lahakriv kol halayla. That's actually permitted to bring them all night. Kedamrinan b'hai pirkin, like we say in this parak, minolon mi bo hashemesh kolomar la'achar bo hashemesh, after the sun sets, umaktiran kol halayla, and they're burned the entire night. And the Gemara continues, Amar Mar, the master said, we said earlier, Shomeya ani afilu eitzim v'dam, one might say, even the wood and the blood also, they need to be salted, shenikru carbon, because those are called carbon. And so the Gemara asks, Man shamatle da'amar eitzim ikri carbon, who is the Tana that holds that eitzim, that wood is referred to as a carbon? That's Rebbe. But the problem is, l'Rebbe mi boy bo melach, according to Rebbe actually, the eitzim do require salt. The Tanya, as we learned in a brisa, carbon, it says in the pasuk, carbon, melamed shemisnadvin eitzim, this pasuk teaches that one can donate wood. V'kamen, how much wood? Shnei gizrin, 2 logs of wood. V'chein hu omer, and that's what it says in the pasuk. It similarly says in the pasuk. This is a pasuk in Sefer Nehemiah. V'hagorolos hipalnu al carbon ha'eitzim. It refers to the eitzim as a carbon. And Rebbe says eitzim carbon minchahein, that eitzim is considered, wood is considered in the category of a carbon mincha. U'tu'unin melech, and it requires salt. U'tu'unin hagoshan, it requires to bring it close to the mizbeach. And so you see, according to Rebbe, eitzim actually do require salt, and that's problematic because in the brisa we had earlier, eitzim are referred to as a carbon, which seems to be following Rebbe, but we're specifically excluding eitzim from melach, from salt. And the Gemara continues, V'yamar Rava, and Rava said, L'divrei Rebbe, that according to Rebbe, eitzim tu'unin kamitza, wood requires kamitza, a fistful to be burned on the mizbeach as well. V'yamar Repapa, and Repapa said, L'divrei Rebbe, according to Rebbe, eitzim tzrichin eitzim, wood requires other wood, you have to burn the wood with other wood. And so again, wood seems to be problematic in this brisa, because if we're following Rebbe, then actually eitzim should require melach. And the Gemara says, Sami mikan eitzim. The Gemara says that's correct. We really have to remove the word eitzim from the brisa. But the Gemara continues and asks, V'yela kra lemutei mai, but if that's the case, what is the pasuk excluding? Ila mu'utei dam, if it's to exclude blood, me'al min chasecha nafka, that we already learned from the pasuk me'al min chasecha. And Rashi explains, Karbon nefesh kisakriv karbon mincha, that's the pasuk of nefesh kisakriv karbon mincha. Shnei gizrin, that's 2 logs. Shnei bekayos gedolos, 2 large logs. V'cheinu omer, and likewise it says, the eitzim carbon mikru, that again eitzim are referred to as carbon. Ulahachi nakat shnei gizrin k'dialfinan mikroi perak shlishti Meseches Yuma. In Meseches Yuma it's learned out with regards to the 2 logs. And Rashi continues, L'divrei Rebbe, according to Rebbe, demakish eitzim lemalicha, or lemincha, that eitzim are compared to mincha. Ulahatzrach hagasha kamincha, it needs to be brought close to the mizbeach like a mincha. Tu'unin kamitza kamincha, it needs kamitza, a fistful to be taken like mincha. V'hamisnadiv shnei gizrin yavi eitzim achem la'seikon, and one who donates 2 logs has to bring other wood wood to burn those logs. So da me'al minchasecha nafkan. So then the question of the Gemara was, what is the pasuk coming to exclude? If you're going to say it's excluding blood, we've already excluded that from me'al minchasecha. Utrei miyute lamali. Why do we need two exclusions for? Name a carbon klal. We should say carbon is a generalization. Me'al minchasecha prad. Me'al minchasecha is a specification. Kol karboncha chazru klal, and then kol karboncha is another generalization. Af kol sha'acherim boin lo chova. So anything where something else comes along with the obligation, like the wood needed to burn it, velo dam, and that would exclude blood. Dein acherim boin lo chova. Nothing else comes along with it. It's simply directly applied. The hashta lekel mifrach. Now one would not be able to ask, once we're removing eitzim from here, so one can no longer ask ima mincha shemateres af kol, that if mincha is a matir, so to anything that's a matir. If we've already included anything that others come as an obligation, and we're including kol hanach, we're including everything. And then in terms of the fact that they're alike in the respect of being a matir, mar bisdam, we're going to include blood. Af kol lemutei mai. So then what's af kol? What's that part of the brisa coming to exclude? Now it makes sense, or it would have made sense, according to what we originally thought. The af kol have him in mai, it's nami that the afkol in the brisa would be excluding the wood. So having motzi lemifrach the nirbi bitzara acherim boin chova kol hanach, then it would have made sense to ask that in terms of the fact that they're alike it with respect to the fact that something else comes along with the obligation, we should include all of those things. Uvitzad de matir, and then in terms of the fact with respect to the fact that they're a matir, that mincha is a permitter, marbis ledam, so then we can include blood. The afkol lemu'utei eitzim, and then we would say that the afkol is excluding wood. Nothing else comes along with the wood, and also the wood is not a permitter. And that's why we would need the other me'al min chasecha to exclude blood. But now that we're saying the wood, there's other wood that has to come along. So imar bidam bitzad dematir, if we're going to include blood because it's a matir, afkol lemu'utei mai. So what's the afkol coming to exclude? L'mayasa min chasecha darshinan min nolael afkol shacherim boin lehem chova aval midi achrina lo. That we said earlier, it has to be something that acherim boin lehem chova, but nothing else. Mayasa lemu'utei. What exactly is that coming to exclude? And we will continue with this discussion in the next video on Daf Chaf Aleph Amud Aleph.